technology is impacting the world we're living. We're undergoing a revolution. And if I were to give them a piece of advice, is choose something that is very practical, a program that is short, developing a skill, with hands-on work and experience, and then looking at education in the long run.
Thank you for joining us today. On this episode, you're going to learn a lot about education in Canada. I am sitting here with Martin Staffolani, an old friend from Argentina who came to Canada over 20 years ago and has a lot of experience in the education industry in Canada. Martin, how are you doing today?
I'm fine, thanks, Andrew. Thank you for the invitation, Elton. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you for coming over. Can you sum up your experience in education? Maybe in 1 minute, give us an overview of where you worked and how much you know about it.
Well, this started over 30 years ago. I started as a teacher first and in public education back in my country. Then when I immigrated to Canada, I was hired as a marketing director for a language school. So basically, I used the skills of languages in order to recruit international students. So that was for a language school. Then I moved to another language school, then to a private boarding school, then public high schools as well. And now I'm back into the private boarding schools.
And on top of that, you're also an education recruiter, right?
Yes, that's right. So that means that I analyze the opportunities of our schools, the strengths, and to promote them overseas in global markets, and then recruit international students to come and study with us.
Okay, Martin. Before we talk about the education industry and where you're currently working and your past experiences, can you tell me a little bit about how the transition was for you coming from Argentina to Canada?
As you know, Argentina is a wonderful country full of natural resources. However, there is a constant mismanagement of those resources through, the administrations. It doesn't matter the color; it's constant. So we had a period of hyperinflation back in 2001, and before that, I could see the economical crisis coming to the country. So in the end, I used my intuition and experience during that time, and I decided to immigrate to Canada. Before that, as I managed a language school that grew from 3 students to begin with up to 366 students, I brought the students during the summer breaks to the United States or Canada for language programs during the summertime, what they call intercambio in Brazil, right? So, those cultural experiences, learning the language. And then it was my third time coming to Canada, and I was offered a job with a school that I brought the students to. So that was an opportunity to expand my horizons, while at the same time transitioning from one country to another where I would have more opportunities, and basically veered from an economical collapse, which happened. So, I made a very good decision coming to Canada.
And what was the most difficult challenge that you had at the beginning, in your first year in Canada?
I think the hardest part is how much you can do. You know how much experience you have. You're confident in yourself. But when you emigrate to another country, other people do not know who you are, your background, your experience, your knowledge, your languages, your ethics, your work ethics. So everything is put to test. And then when you are tested, then that can affect a little bit your self-esteem, let's put it that way, because you are constantly put into test. But if you have a sense of direction, where you're going, why you came here, what your focus is, and what your objective is, then it's much easier because you become stronger, believing in yourself. So the biggest challenges were basically work challenges. You have to adapt and start from zero, start doing things that probably you didn't do in your country, but then you lose your social status, everything. But then you know that in the long run, that's going to work because you have a clear objective of why you came here and what you want to accomplish. So it makes you stronger.
Did you have any financial difficulties at the beginning?
Well, I end up from owning my own company in Argentina. I end up making 10 times less. So it was tenfold less, but then, it was for 2.5 years. So that transition wasn't easy. But then, you have to do what you have to do in order to make it happen. And then again, keeping a clear focus on the final version of yourself that you want to see in the end, that's what it matters. And that's what it makes you stronger. But I have to say that overall, the macroeconomics of Canada and the political stability, gives you what you need in order to make it happen as well. So it's not a question that you do it on your own, but when the right conditions are settled, then if you have the education and the background and the will to do it, then it happens. Yeah.
So basically, if you're prepared, the opportunities will appear.
Exactly.
Martin, what has changed in over 2 decades since you came to Canada in the education and in the country?
Well, I think, we are part of globalization has been already over 30 years now. So we're prone to, changes in the world, and then that affects internally as well. So there has been many changes. Starting here, talking about Canada with the price of property in big cities. So it's been, more than doubling, I would say triple numbers. So that is a big change. That is putting pressure on newcomers. So by the time I came here, it was a different scenario for renting and for buying a home, which shouldn't exceed 30% of your income. Right now, most newcomers have to work together with another person or share their accommodations in order to make a living and to push it closer to the 30%, which right now is around, for most people, newcomers is around 50 to 60% of their income. So that to me is a real big issue for newcomers, new people, because they want to make ahead, get ahead in life and professionally speaking, but the conditions right now are harder, and that's one of the things that I think that it has changed. And then of course there is more population here in Metro Vancouver. You can see the changes. There's the logic changes of a city that is growing, more developments, more transportation, more people from other countries, which is somehow good because we're enjoying multicultural, interactions in the city. So I think that's positive.
And are there more schools nowadays as well? Are there more students, international students coming to Canada?
Yes. We've seen a growth. International education, as we call the sector, that means welcoming international students into Canada, varies because we're, again, prone to globalization. And then one day, for example, our currency is strong, so less people come because it becomes a more expensive destination, or suddenly there is a restriction on study permits. That happened to me in 1 year, where we had a group of students coming, and then suddenly from 1 week to another, there was an imposition of a study permit for students from certain countries. So this is another thing that influences and can change the industry. Then also other countries may become more competitive by the implementation of new immigration rules, like, for example, letting international students in higher education, work and study, and then express entry, and then immigration into the country. So those factors really, affect our industry a lot. But to answer to your question, if the number of students has grown, yes, and undoubtedly it has grown. But 4 years back, before the pandemic time, China was a big market, and nowadays that is shifting to India. So we're having more and more higher education students coming from that market. So things change. Now we're facing new politics into play. Most recently in the last week, about Canada relations with India, and I think that's going to affect too, right? So
And Russia too.
And Russia too. Back in time when the Minister of Foreign Affairs made a comment on Saudi Arabia, then the governing power in Saudi Arabia basically cut off the scholarships for Saudi students coming and studying with us.
Is it a coincidence? Is Trudeau always saying the wrong things?
Well, I think that, Canada stands for certain values that are realistic and unrealistic at the same time, because we can aim to accomplish certain values of tolerance, inclusion, and equality, but that may work from the borders of Canada inside. But then, even though we are trying as a country and as citizens to embrace those values, in different cultures it plays differently. So we have to be really careful on the way we communicate that to other countries, so that it doesn't come across as an imposition, or it doesn't come across as a finger pointing to the internal policies of those countries. So we have to be really mindful of that and careful. And real politics is different to a naive conception on certain values. So we have to be careful, because then that affects the economy and the relations that we have with other countries, and that directly affects international education.
And Martin, are these students coming because education here is so good, or is it more because of the lifestyle, because it's so safe here, or because parents want a better future for their kids in the marketplace here in Canada?
Well, I think it's a lot of factors. Like, again, Canada is one of the few countries that you mentioned the word Canada globally, and the perception is positive. It's positive in terms of quality of life, in terms of education, and that is based mainly on, PISA results, the examinations that are taken globally to measure, different aspects of the students' progression. So Canada is usually at the top 10 in PISA results. So we have that benefit. So people think about safety, good quality of education, and then for some of them, the progression from high school into higher education, and then, immigrating to a safe country, which nowadays, with the global conflicts that we have, Canada is so far a safe ground.
You help a lot of students come here to high school. Is that correct?
Yes.
How far ahead do they have to decide to do this? I mean, do they decide, okay, next month classes start in Canada, I should go now, or are they planning 1 or 2 years ahead of time?
The application for high school programs is as long as as higher education. They cannot make a very quick decision like next month I want to come, except for those countries that have a visa waiver, or visa exempt program, that they can come for 6 months without a study permit. So they can come, as a tourist for less than 6 months, and then they can study. Then in those cases, yes, but they're risking on availability in our case, in the dormitories, let's say accommodation, and also in the class, within the class. So we have to look at those two factors on top of their admissibility, the students' admissibility, which is, the transcripts. We're looking closely to their transcripts, references, Sometimes teachers give references not as fast as we want it to. And then we need other documents as well. So in short, for a high school program, you need at least to plan 1 year ahead of time and start, submitting the documents by, October, after September, for the following year, for the September intake on next year.
1 year ahead.
1 year ahead. So right now I'm working on the recruitment season for 2024-2025.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just working 2 years ahead of time. I'm planning all the material, the marketing material, and the recruitment material ahead of time, because people need time to take a look. And especially when it is, in my case, like I'm representing a private boarding school. So it's a lot of money, and it's only for a few people that can afford that. So people need time to understand, to comply with all the paperwork and admission process, and then, finally apply for the study permit and obtain it.
So what's your job title at Brooks West Shore? And by the way, can you explain where you're working right now and what that school is all about?
Okay.
And after that, I want to know what the process is like for parents who want to register their kids to come 1 year from now. What are all the challenges, the hurdles that they have to go through?
So I'm the executive director of recruitment. That means that I oversee a team of people, doing the recruitment globally for Brooks West Shore. And Brooks West Shore is a private boarding IB World School in Victoria. It's actually located near Royal Roads University. Very well known for the Hatley Castle, where X-Men and the Descendants movies was filmed. So what does it mean to be an IB World School? First of all, IB stands for International Baccalaureate, which is a curriculum that was developed 54 years ago in Geneva, Switzerland, under the sponsorship of the United Nations. Is said to be during that time, for sons and daughters of diplomats staying in Switzerland. And basically the spirit of the curriculum is to develop like well-rounded citizens with a global view and with a focus on trying to find solutions to real-life problems. So we develop skills, in the students, like innovation, curiosity, good communicators, critical thinkers, etc. So we're following that. And then the curriculum actually, during the last 2 years, is the equivalent to first year of university. So the expectations are really, really high. And they have to work on an extended essay, which is like a mini thesis, where they choose the topic, they see it from different angles, they learn to analyze it, they need to present their own view on the topic, and then to defend it in order for them to obtain the IB diploma program. To give you an idea, the total number of points for IB is 44 points, the maximum, which is extremely unusual for some students to obtain. But Harvard, for most of the programs, they require 33 points. So this year, actually, the majority of our students, our average was 31 points. And then some students obtain 40 points, which makes our school extremely desirable, competitive, and, opening doors to university level. And then the second part of your question is, what do parents need to prepare for the admissions to the high school? So they need to prepare, the transcripts for the last 2 years. We're looking at an average GPA of minimum 75 points or more. They need to also apply for an online English test, because we need to make sure that if they're applying for grade 8, they have enough English in order for them to be admitted. It's not the same thing of the English level required for grade 11 or 12, which would be an IELTS 6.5, a university level, entry level, same for us. And then, the school references. We look into different aspects. We evaluate more than 30 points. And then we conduct an interview that I personally conduct with the students. And I ask around 45 questions to know in depth and to develop a whole profile and a whole picture to make a final decision with the admissions director. So we really go in depth, and we want to make sure that the students are admissible to the school. And then we need to issue the letter of acceptance and the custodianship declaration because they're minors, and we are fully responsible of their well-being while they're in Canada.
Wow. Wow. Sounds like a lot.
Yes.
Plus the little detail, it still costs a lot of money. Besides all this work, they still have to invest a lot.
Yes.
Give me an idea of how much it costs to send my child, say 15 years old, to study at this school in Canada.
Well, for this year, still, it's around $63,000, including the boarding, full board, and then the school and material.
60,000 is not a lot, especially if you're including basically the living costs, right?
Yes.
And Martin, at this age, people who are 15, 16, 14, when I was 15, I was clubbing in Brazil. Yeah. I never drank, kind of never drank, but I never did drugs. But I always loved going out. What can these guys living in a boarding school do after school?
Well, we have a set, an arranged program of after-school activities, ASA, and we offer around 55 options divided in sports, creative activities like the arts, and social work. So students are, fully booked with activities. They need to at least do 3 activities a week divided in those 3 areas. And then they can choose to pick another one on the 4th or 5th day. And then during the weekends, we also organize activities outside the school that are monitored by our school staff, right?
So going to bars or pubs or clubs, they cannot do it?
No, because the legal age here is 19 in British Columbia. And so they cannot go, even if they try to go to a nightclub, they wouldn't be allowed. If they wanted to buy alcohol, they wouldn't be allowed either. So it's not possible.
But can students actually go out of the boarding area?
Yes, they do.
Can go to the city. Can they travel too?
They can actually, 2 blocks away from the school, there's a bus going to downtown Victoria. So mainly during the weekends when they have more time, especially on Sundays, that is their free day, they can go to downtown Victoria and enjoy by themselves. And they really, really love that sense of freedom because even though, let's say in Latin America now they can go out, they can enjoy themselves, usually at night they need to be very cautious and then come back from point A to point B. They have the freedom by one side, but they have the unsafety on the other. And then parents sometimes go and pick them up and stuff like that. So it's different. Here, they have the freedom to go from the school to downtown Victoria and then come back with no problem. Of course, during our hours, because there's a curfew, at 6 p.m. and they have to come back for dinner.
Do these students who usually come for 1 year, do many of them end up staying longer, or do they go back to their home countries?
Well, the families that can afford to pay for an extra year or more, they stay for longer. We have the students that have stayed for at least 4 years at school, enter a university to the program of their choice, and then, living in Canada now and becoming professionals here in Canada.
And of course, it all sounds wonderful, but I know that there are many challenges that students face. Let's not even talk about where you're working now, but remember all the ESL schools and think about colleges and universities too. For international students, what are the main challenges that you think they face?
Well, it's a simple question, but a complex answer because it depends pretty much their cultural components. So for some cultures, it's easier to adapt to a schedule than other countries. They face difficulties adapting to ours, being on time, being responsible, study hard, and then, submit the paperwork and extra work For some countries, this is a transition, becoming more formal. And for some cultures, it's the food. Transitioning into the food, it's an issue. Some cultures have their own culinary features, and traditions. And then when they come to Canada, they find that they're eating differently. So that's another transition. And then for other countries and cultures where, English is written in a different way from their, handwriting, basically with ideographs or from left to right and differently. So then that's another transition. And then the cultural component as well. For some cultures, people are very warm and they're very, physical warm. They touch, they kiss, and then, in Canada, that is only within family members, close friends or, people that know each other from before to become a little bit more warm. So they suffer from that as well. It's a transition for them to adapt to that.
This all sounds great at the boarding school, but for parents who do not have the means to send students to a boarding school like this, are there any cheaper options for international students to come and study at an elementary school or high school in Canada?
Yes, they can basically start with a short-term program, which is usually during the summertime in Canada or wintertime. They can send them for 4 weeks, 2 weeks to, just to learn the language, plus activities. That is what usually call the winter or summer camps. In our case, we offer a 2 or 3 week program that is a leadership development academy. During the summertime, they stay in our boarding program, and then they go back to their countries, and then they have to develop their own project as a leader with a social impact, and they have a coaching during 6 months. So that's very interesting. I would suggest to parents that don't have the means to send the kids for 1 full year to that. And then the other option is, if they have the means, but they don't have the means to pay for a boarding school, they can choose 1 semester in a public high school or 1 year in a public high school. But the accommodation in that case would be with a homestay family.
And what is a homestay family?
Homestay families are families that have a spare room or rooms, and they basically rent that room to international students, and they provide the full services to those students. And so those students are able to come to Canada, and they, instead of staying in a boarding place, they stay with a family. And then for that, some, high school programs, language programs, or even universities outsource that service with the homestay companies. There are several, homestay companies that basically screen the families. They categorize them. They go over their criminal checks, and then, family composition, etc. And then they do the matching between the student and the family. But again, it's not going to be the same as staying with your own family. So if the parents are expecting the same type of food, the same type of warmth and family atmosphere, they are not prepared to send their kids overseas. So that's one of the big conversations that I have with parents before coming here.
It's a big hit or miss, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
I know some people who have had amazing experiences staying in homestay. Even my sister, when she came here, she has a travel agency in Brazil, and she sent a group of people here to Vancouver, and she ended up staying in a homestay, and she loved it. And I have other friends who came and did the same. But I've also met a lot of students who were struggling, and then they have to move. And the food seems to be a big problem.
I myself experienced homestay when I first came to Canada. Yes, I stayed with a family that was originally from Singapore, and then we became friends. Very nice people. And also the second time I stayed with a family from the Philippines, and they were beautiful, close to my culture people, sharing values and things like that. So that's, beautiful. And then you learn to interact and learn from the other cultures, the food, their customs, etc. But another transition that an issue that I would like to share with you and your people is that the medical system here in Canada is public. They're not private clinics. So parents really suffer a lot from the other side, when their children get sick, because the attention is not immediate, or you cannot pay to go to a private clinic to get immediate attention. So they have to wait until the symptoms evolve. And then once the symptoms evolve, then they can go to the doctor, and then the doctor can prescribe eventually an antibiotic. In other cultures, people go to off-the-counter, medicine, and even they can easily get a prescription and then take antibiotics right away.
Yeah.
So that is another big difference, and I try to contain the parents and try to explain over and over again that they must rely also on.
You're being so nice, so politically correct. You try to explain the unexplainable. I can't get over it. I think, and I know you can't speak up, but I can. I think the health system here is so bad, and I know that most people are going to get mad at me for saying this, but it's great. Honestly, it's great. If you are a drug addict, if you are trying to commit suicide, it's amazing. They will rescue you. They will send lots of cars and ambulances, etc., right away. I know I lived in Chinatown for a few years, and it's amazing. But if you actually have a chronic problem and you need to see a specialist, good luck. Good luck. We have friends, for example, refugees from Ukraine, and the mother has a problem. Well, her son has a problem. He's 3 and cannot say a word. She needs to send him to specialist. Okay, she has to wait 9 months. Well, 9 months? And my wife now, a few months ago, she needed to do an, what's the name of that? Well, she needed to get a test done. And then she would have to wait between 3 and 9 months to get a test done.
Yeah.
So we decided to just go pay $1,000 and go and do it. And then she did it within, 4 days. Yeah. And I get so frustrated seeing a lot of people coming from Brazil, from Russia, a lot of people from Russia, from Korea, from China, even from India. If they need to go and undergo a surgery, for example, or go see a doctor or specialist, they go back to those countries and come back a month later. It's insane. Even for cancer, plastic surgeries, etc. I know plastic surgery is slightly different, but we have a friend who just came back from Mexico. So we could talk about this forever, right?
I have simplified the problem as the public system, the MSP in our province is fair because it's fair to everybody, but it's inefficient. Fair, but inefficient.
Inefficient, yeah.
So and then I think one of the issues here is a problem that was set to happen sooner or later, because first of all, if you have qualified professionals and doctors coming from other countries, they cannot be doctors here. Why? Because they have not graduated here. They don't have the Canadian experience. And then there's always like a kind of a suspicion that if you're graduated from another country, you're not as qualified as people that have locally, graduated. And that's an issue. That's an issue. To me, it doesn't look really fair at all. It doesn't look equitable across the board. It's actually a missing big point here, because if we're looking at the knowledge, why don't you evaluate the knowledge? If you're looking at the experience, why don't you evaluate the experience? If it is English, why don't you evaluate English? And then why are those things not done? That's my question. So it's kind of like excluding other professionals from entering the Canadian workforce. And that is a larger issue and problem that we're missing, highly qualified people entering the country and working immediately, transitioning from their countries to our country.
Yeah.
When I think it's a question of, evaluating those issues, solving them, trying to find a solution, And I personally would not mind to be, going to a doctor that is from a foreign country. I live myself in other countries, and I think doctors are highly qualified in other countries as well. And, they're culturally approachable as well. And they spend a little bit of time with you when you're trying to explain a problem. You don't go for one problem only. You go for your overall thing. You don't need to make another appointment to go for a second problem. So to me, it's really broken and segmented and unfair and excluding other professions. And I'm being politically incorrect right now with you. My father is a doctor, so I know I lived medicine at home from childhood. So yeah, it's kind of like one of those weaknesses as a country and strategic weaknesses as a country. We're missing out on good quality experience, knowledgeable professionals from overseas immigrating and then transitioning into Canada, and they would contribute to this country right away.
Mm-hmm. So to make clear, they are coming, but they're just not having
driving cabs.
But they're not having their qualifications and experience validated, right?
Yeah, we prefer to have a profession, an engineer driving a cab.
Yeah, that's
because he's not qualified. It doesn't have the experience. It's really segregatory. The rules are set to be segregatory, and that contradicts what we stand for in Canada.
Right. Let's go back to education. When these students come and study at high school, for example, do you personally or do you at this school actually help them find placement at universities and colleges across Canada or across North America?
Yes, we do have, a counselor, a university counselor within our school. And most schools, I have to say, it's not only our school, but most high schools do have a university counselor. And they start working with the students as early as grade 10, where they have a subject that is called planning. And basically, planning is like starting to see and explore what they want to do in the future, right? And they need to do a project, and then they need to work basically inside out. So to know a little bit about their vocations and focus, right? So then after, when they're, choosing subjects and courses in grade 11 and 12, it would be geared towards the university program that the students are willing to enter.
And how troublesome is that transition from a school here to a college or university here compared to from a school overseas or a university overseas to a university here?
Well, obviously, when the students graduate within Canada, they have a big advantage because they have subjects that are required for university entrance, like English 12, for example. So that is a big one. And then they do have to have science, social sciences, etc. And then the transition is smooth, basically. It's easier rather than coming from a foreign country where they need to do sometimes a language pathway program, or even taking new subjects in order for them to be admitted to a university level.
Mm-hmm. What kinds of universities do you like to work with? What do you actually look for when you're recommending a college or university to your students?
We basically work with all universities because it depends on the student's vocation and focus. So it's not an issue to work with universities at that level. So it's not we're open to work with all of them. But in our school in particular, we have 100% of university acceptance, and most of the students, due to location, they choose to study at the University of Victoria, Camden College, SFU, UBC, and some students choose to go to University of Toronto or McGill. These are the most popular universities. And when they choose an IB program, it's because they're aiming to, the top-ranked universities.
Mm-hmm. Tell me a little bit more about the average grade of students that graduate from Brooks West Shore And what does that mean when they are deciding what they're going to do in the future?
Okay. So IB has a point, graduation, and then the maximum is 44 points. But it's extremely unusual to get a student over 40 points. It basically would be a mastermind, right? And to give you an example, Harvard requires that for most of their programs to, attain 33 points. And the global average for IB diploma program is 30 points. And our school stands for an average of 31 points, having some students even attain 40 points.
Wow.
Yeah. I even interview a student at UBC, taking, a science program there. So, very successful student and, pianist and a great human being as well.
Yeah. For any parents or even teenagers watching this anywhere in the world, why should they consider coming to Canada to study, either for 1 year or to study and live here the rest of their lives?
I would say the first thing is language. Number two would be, having the experience to go to an international airport, becoming more independent, holding your passport, not losing your passport, passing the security checks, immigration. That alone is an experience, right? That helps the students grow. That would be one. Secondly is when they arrive to a new culture is learning from the culture, the food, appreciating your country food when you're away, appreciating your family values. Also, that's a benefit as well. And then also learning how things are done differently, learning how processes are done differently in other countries. Then they learn from that as well. And then the networking they can develop with other students. So most of our students end up, traveling to other countries. Let's say they make friends from students from Japan, India, Germany, and they end up, going and traveling and making friends worldwide. And that is adding additionally another layer of wealth, of experience to the students. Yeah.
Is Canada still the land of opportunity?
I would say that is one of the countries that offer, that it's, I would say, safe, economically fairly stable, and politically stable. So if those three factors are considered into your question, then yes, it's a land of opportunities. But there's also other issues that are affecting us a lot, which is inflation, and then for the younger generations, and I can see that through my son, he's living with me. Otherwise, I think it would be very challenging for him just to work. He graduated here, took a second degree here, and then to work and then to make a living, it would be very challenging. He would probably be sharing the room with other young professionals. So it's a challenge for the newer generations, right?
The cost of living in Canada
cost of living
is extremely high.
Yeah.
It's about the same as in Scandinavia, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't have information about Scandinavia, but I have read a little bit about some of the underlying issues in Sweden right now, and even with new immigrants, and then even the Prime Minister from Sweden has declared that is, a country with two countries within one country. The new immigrants are living like in a different country, and then they haven't been able to really, integrate to the wealth of the society. Yeah, in Sweden. Sweden.
You shouldn't say that. Trump said that and got in big trouble. You shouldn't say that.
Well, it's.
You remember when Trump said something?
Yeah, but you can
should not be saying anything bad about Sweden.
Oh, well,
yeah.
Anyhow, there's an issue, and then in Europe in general, we're seeing that immigrants, even though they were accepted to become part of Europe, then there's an economic difference between and lack of integration between the native Europeans and then the new immigrants. Even for the first and second generation, it's an ongoing issue. We've seen it in France with the rioting as well.
Yeah.
So it's a question of time that, if we don't become a little bit more, embracing of, let's say, the skills that other people are coming from other countries and really letting them, work and be creative, they will be the happiest person on earth and grateful to be able to work and be themselves, right? And bring their experience. But we have to set the rules for that. And that is my biggest doubt.
Sometimes we're too harsh, I think. It's so easy to criticize. I criticize Canada, I criticize Germany, I criticize Italy, Brazil. But I think it's still a very good place to be.
Yeah, no, in comparison, but I like to give a little bit of context for younger people so that their expectations are realistic, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, it's not easy. It's not supposed to be easy, right? If it were easy, everybody would come and make it.
Yeah.
And now, in order to prepare for the future, what would you recommend young students to actually pursue when they are finishing high school now here in Canada?
First of all, if I were to give a piece of advice, is that technology is impacting the world we're living. We're undergoing a revolution, which is the artificial intelligence revolution. I'm not the first one to say it. We all know that is happening. So that is going to have an impact on their choices, on their career choices. And if I were to give them a piece of advice, is choose something that is very practical, a program that is short, developing a skill, with hands-on work and experience, and then looking at education in the long run, instead of like the old paradigm where things were, you studied once, you studied law, you studied medicine, you became a priest, a lawyer, military, whatever you chose, or an engineer, and then it was set in stone and it was for all your life. Nowadays, you need to learn, the skills linked to technology in shorter period of times and looking at education in the long run. So I'll study this short program now, but then I will have to upgrade it in 2 years from now, and then another upgrade in another 4 years, and then probably in another 7 years. So always looking and to be open and eager to learn and upgrade yourself professionally. So that would be my advice.
Yeah, taking learning as a constant component of your life.
Exactly.
And staying curious, right?
Yes.
Martin, what's next for you? Your next big Canadian dream?
Well, talking of technology right now is I'm trying to learn more about what we're undergoing. First of all, I'm trying to understand. During my generation, we didn't have phones, basically. Like even we only had one phone line for the whole family, no cell phones, no computers. So our transition has been big. We came from nothing to what we are today. So I'm driven by curiosity and perfectionism, looking to improve and areas to improve. And I think technology is challenging me professionally. So I'm trying to see how I can adapt and I can use my knowledge and experience with technology. So I cannot tell you more right now because I'm in the early stages right now.
Cool. Martin, how can someone find you and find Brooks Westshore?
Okay. So they can either do it by email to mstaffolani@brooks.org, or they can contact me via WhatsApp, +1 778 898 2613.
Great. We're going to put all this information in the description for this podcast or for this video if anybody's watching this on YouTube. Thank you so much, Martin.
Thank you so much for this opportunity.
It was very nice chatting with you.
Thank you.
And thank you for listening to this episode or for watching this. If you are watching this on YouTube, remember to like this, to share it with other people, especially with parents from across the world who might be interested in sending their kids to study in Canada. And please subscribe to our channel as well. Thank you so much, and I'll see you on the next episode.